So I'm really delighted to be here today as High Sheriff of Nottingham, past, present and future all in one day here at the Planetarium and Observatory. We've put in a time capsule which is going to be opened in 2086, so it's very exciting and wonderful to see the kids here today, inspiring them in STEM and scientific future.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Sherwood Observatory, Planetarium and Science Discovery Centre. This morning is a significant moment, even in all of the significant moments for this project over the past few years, and indeed over the past few decades, if you trace it back to the beginning of Sherwood Observatory itself. It's significant because it's one of the last acts in the formal schedule of the creation of the Planetarium and the Science Discovery Centre, and it's great to see that we have some representatives from some of the contractors who built the place with us here as well. That is fantastic. So this is almost like the end of the beginning. Not quite maybe, but getting close to the end of the beginning. And it's significant because obviously we will be burying the time capsule into its chamber and lowering and sealing the chamber slab over the top of it. Time capsules seem very futuristic, don't they? And indeed they can be, but actually they've been around for nearly 150 years. The first time capsule that we know of that was deliberately created as a time capsule for that purpose was in New York City in 1876. And they get created for all kinds of reasons: political, historical, social, cultural, and they get found all the time as well, like dug up in construction projects, even when people didn't know they were there and their original purpose and so on has been forgotten. And there have been some time capsules that are linked to space as well, like the Voyager Golden Records in 1977, like the Immortality Drive that went to the International Space Station in 2008. And in actual fact, time capsules linked to space hark all the way back to 1896, when one was buried under the foundation stone of Perth Observatory in Western Australia. So we are in good company, aren't we? But this is a particularly special moment because it is the burying and the sealing of a time capsule for our local community space centre, created by local people, for local people, and it will be opened by local people when the time comes. So it gives me now very great pleasure to welcome to speak someone who has been the driving force behind the creation of this Planetarium and Science Discovery Centre, but supported by colleagues, but without his drive and ambition, we wouldn't all be sitting here now. Please, would you put your hands together for Dr. Steve Wallace, MBE, to say a few words. Steve, thank you.
You'd think I would know by now, after all these years, not to follow Simon's great speeches, because he's always a hard act to follow. Welcome everyone on this momentous occasion. For the adults in the room, this is probably a once-in-a-lifetime experience. For the children in the room, it might be a twice-in-a-lifetime experience, which I'll get onto in a few moments. What we see in front of us here in this cylinder is a huge collection of artefacts that sort of try to typify the period that we live in, plus a series of thoughts from many of the people in this room, either in picture form or in written form, about what they think the world might look like in 61 years' time in 2086. You might be wondering why we chose 2086. Well, this reservoir was first opened in 1886. By a sheer coincidence, the piano that you've been heard playing by Chris here was also built in 1886. The observatory that you'll be hearing more about, I guess, of Dave Collins, our founding member, in a few minutes, was opened in 1986, so it seemed fitting we'd open the time capsule in 2086 in 61 years' time. So it's 200 years by the time we open the time capsule, it'll be 200 years since this place was built and 100 years since the observatory was built. This reservoir you're sitting in was designed by architects and engineers from our region and built by local contractors. Our observatory was designed and built by our founding members, again locals who had a passion for astronomy and the skills to pull it off. And the Science Centre and Planetarium was designed and built by architects, engineers and contractors from our region as well. And as Simon said, we've got 2 representatives here today. So welcome back. I hope you like what we've done with it. So it seems kind of fitting that we're standing in a structure that was made nearly 140 years ago beneath a state-of-the-art building that was finished last year, next to an observatory that was built 50 years ago, and we're talking about preserving something that will be open 61 years in the future. You get that sort of sense of progression of history and of time and how things move on. Our mission, our Astronomy Society, is to encourage young and old alike to take an interest and potentially careers in STEM subjects, so science, technology, engineering and maths. And without those subjects, we literally couldn't be standing here. It's people who have got skills in those subjects who built all of this over the generations. We're using astronomy and space science as an inspirational topic to do this, and one of my hopes for the future is that our successors in our organisation continue to do that over the next 61 years and beyond. We've been operating our Planetarium Science Centre for 7.5 months now. Our original plan, when we gathered all the funding for this, was to get 20,000 visitors a year through the doors. I'm pleased to report in those 7.5 months we've already had 20,000 visitors through the door. And I did a quick bit of maths, and that means when the capsule's opens, we'll have had 2 million visitors through the door if we keep that run rate going. So no pressure, Tony. We live in an increasingly complicated world that relies on technology, so that's why it's really important that we encourage people to understand more about science and engineering and technology. The jobs of the future and the growth and development at our local level, regional level and national level are going to be absolutely dependent on people who have got those skills. So many of you guys in the audience who are still at school will be the ones who grow up and create our future. So it was really good that we could work with Ashfield Council as one of a whole cluster of projects that they've been working on to encourage that to happen. As a former scientist myself, they're not just needed, but they're also very personally stimulating and rewarding. I've had a great time being a research chemist and now an astronomer. But there's another reason as well. A lot of people, and particularly the young people in this audience, are spending a lot of time on social media at the moment, which can be a fantastic source of information. But there are also concerns about it being used to spread disinformation and rumours and conspiracies. So another thing that science and engineering teaches you is critical thinking skills. So you can look at that stuff you're being bombarded with online and work out what are the conspiracies and what are the real things. And I think that's going to become much, much more important as we go forward. So what will the world look like in 61 years' time? What's my hopes for the future? Well, first of all, I hope I see as many of those 61 years as possible, firsthand. That said, unless Julian and the team, who have done an absolutely fantastic job putting that time capsule together. I've sort of dipped in and out and seen bits of it, and you wouldn't believe how much effort has gone into preserving the stuff that's gone into that time capsule. So thank you to Julian and to the team for making this day possible, and I think we owe them a round of applause. So unless you do as good a job preserving me as you've done on the stuff in there, I'm not going to be around in 2086. So it's very hard to make predictions about the future. Think back 60 odd years. It's only 64 years since the first humans ventured into space and 56 years since Neil Armstrong first set foot on the moon. We haven't left Earth orbit since 1972, but with the Artemis program and others, will hopefully by the time the young people in this room are back in 2086, we'll have been back on the moon, we might be living on the moon, and we should have had boots on Mars as well by then. So in 61 years' time, we might be a multi-planet species, which would be a great thing to see. This decade, we've really moved on with the technology to explore space. Just one example of the sort of things that's leading to, we've got the James Webb Space Telescope and the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, which was just opened a couple of weeks ago, massively increasing our understanding about the universe. Just a small example, but maybe it's the most significant. If you look at what we've got driving around on the surface of Mars and some of the discoveries the James Webb Telescope's making, we're starting to get hints that we might not be alone in the universe and there might be life out there somewhere. So one of my hopes is that we confirm that evidence, and by 2086 we know that we're not alone in the universe. Can you imagine that, knowing that there's life out there somewhere? And maybe one of the young people in this room, maybe it's you who make that discovery. Somebody's got to. Why can't it be one of you guys? You never know. So, turning back to the Earth, we're facing many challenges. So I hope that before 2086, we brought back into a balance our emissions and resource use so we can live sustainably on the planet. For example, climate change, I think we all know it's starting to have an impact, but there is cause for optimism. And again, I turn back to engineering. It might be that the solution to some of those issues is going to happen just up the road here at West Burton, which is going to be the home of the first UK fusion power station. That's a power station that relies on bringing the energy of the sun, fusion reactions, down to Earth in a controlled way. And that would be a great thing. So hopefully we're all living on fusion power by 2086 as well. And that's another reason why it's important to inspire everybody to do science and engineering, because we need engineers to work on those fantastic projects, and we need scientists as well. So it's great to see so many young people in the room today. Many of you, in fact I hope all of you, will still be around in 2086. So please send a message to your future selves, whether that's going to be a little chip in your brain that helps you keep track of things or what. But put the date in your diaries, you young people. 5th of October at 11 a.m, 2086. You're all formally invited to come back here and see the capsule opened. So that's where I'll end. Thank you for your attention. I'll hand back to Simon.
Thank you very much, Steve. So the time capsule is clearly about the present, as we're all here, and it's about the future, as we heard, and looking towards its eventual opening for those of us that will still be here at that time. But this whole project and this building that we're sitting in now is also rooted in the past of the Sherwood Observatory, and so I would like now to ask the original founder member of the Sherwood Observatory, David Collins, to come up and say a few words. Thank you, David.
Thank you for all coming here. It's a long time since I first came into this structure, 1972. We said at the time this would be a nice place for a planetarium. I had 3 wishes: a planetarium, quality optics for the telescope, radio astronomy. Now I've got all 3 of them. So I'll start with a little bit of a history of the place and why it was built. In the late 1870s, there was an outbreak of diphtheric pandemic within Sutton Ashfield. At the time, doctors said that it was probably due to the quality or poor quality of the water and the lack of maintenance on the local pumps that was supplying the water. A lot of little small cottage hospitals occurred. One of them actually was immediately across the road from this structure. So anyway, a water sample was sent to laboratories in London for analysis. And the report came back. Now, there's a little bit of Victorian language in this. By that I don't mean swear, it's just the way that the Victorians use the language. The water contained 60 grains of mineral matter, 50 to 60 degrees of hardness, and then other extraneous, offensive and dangerous matters declared itself. So in other words, it wasn't very nice. Right, so what happened then was a committee was formed, and it was decided to explore the red sandstone in this area. Now this red sandstone was laid down millions of years ago, probably in the before Jurassic Age, and it's like a huge sponge. Anyway, boreholes were drilled, and they found the most suitable place was at the foot of Hollowwood Hospital. Hollowwood Hill, I should say. And the land was purchased from the Duke of Portland. And his instructions were that the pipework must follow the road and not across his lands. So there was 3.5 miles of 9-inch piping from there to here, and then 8-inch piping from here down into Sutton. So there was a pumping station built at bottom of Hollowwood. This was what was called a balancing reservoir, and it had a valve house on top. Now, the idea of this place was that 2 days a week they could close down the pumping station to do all the necessary maintenance work, clear out the fireboxes and so on and so forth. And during that period of time, this water from here was then valved and switched down into Sutton. Right, so the contractors and architects were appointed, and they came up with this design. Now it's 75 foot in diameter. Now I'm talking feet and inches, and today we're talking centimetres. Don't forget, Victorian times it was feet and inches. Proper, what I call proper measurement. 75 foot in diameter. There were 16 of these pillars. 8 of them were 20 foot high, 8 of them were 18 foot high. So consequently, you can see the different height of the archways. The structure was buttressed on the outside and then buried in clay, and it was designed to hold possibly 500,000 gallons of water in here. Now, some time ago I was researching the history of this place, and I couldn't find anything at all, but I did find a similar edifice down in somewhere in London, and it was very much similar to this, and it said that these pillars were put in to break up the actual weight of the water, so it virtually pulled the water down into smaller pockets. So anyway, when done, the thing was eventually opened by Mr. Unwin Heathcote. A party of about 40 people were taken down to Hollowwood to see the opening. He christened the pump the Hygeia, Greek word for hygiene. Then they came up here, had a look at this place, and then they went down and apparently had a banquet in the Denman's Head. Very nice. And there was a fountain on Portland Square, and youngsters were playing in this fountain. So 5th of October, it must have been a fairly decent weather. Anyway, it was open on the 5th of October, 1886. Now, other significant events at that time: the Statue of Liberty in New York was completed and dedicated in 1886. And the other thing is the Apache chief Geronimo, he surrendered to the Union Army in 1886. So we moved forward 200 years to 1986, which is when the planetarium, the observatory was officially owned by the Astronomer Royal at the time. Another major event of 1986 was the Chernobyl disaster. Now, when this occurred, a lot of the people were brought away from Ukraine, different parts of Europe, some of them over here, and we actually entertained a group of them in the observatory. On a personal note, but going back to 1886, on a personal note, one of my granddads was born. So we're busy with the year 2080, with the year 86. And tomorrow is my 86th birthday. So, I've seen it, I've got the 3 wishes. I'm a happy bunny. So, what will the reaction be on revealing the contents of this capsule? Hopefully it will show dedication of a small group of people to create worthwhile addition to the region and encourage the continuing growth of learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, David, and it's marvellous to hear that contextual history about this building and that of the Sherwood Observatory, a long and proud history in this community. I'm now going to invite up the Observatory's History Project and Time Capsule lead, who's sort of overseen, as we heard, the creation of the Time Capsule and the elements of history surrounding that. Please would you put your hands together and welcome up Sherwood Observatory's Julian Best.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, High Sheriff, distinguished guests and children from our local schools who have been involved in helping us with our exciting Time Capsule project. Thank you all for joining us on this special occasion down here in our former reservoir, which, as you know, forms part of our brilliant new Planetarium and Science Centre, where in a few moments we'll be sealing our time capsule in the central chamber with an opening date of 5th of October 2086. And as Steve already alluded to, 11 a.m, so put it in your Google calendars. You may ask why 2086, and indeed why even a time capsule? The idea came from a discussion the Planetarium project manager, Steve Wallace, and myself had right at the start before the works had started, as I often remembered the likes of Blue Peter, having 1 or 2 over the years, as an avid watcher of the programme growing up, and I thought, why don't we have one? Hopefully, ours would turn out in better condition than some of theirs. At the time, I was leading the Artefact and History project for the new build, which was to tell the story of the history behind the reservoir, why it's here, what it did, and strangely, why Sherwood Observatory came to be in it. Well, all that history is on the panels behind you on the far wall. As thanks to some National Lottery Heritage Fund, we were awarded some funding to research the history in detail and to present it to what you see now, along with several fantastic now preserved artefacts that we inherited when we took over the reservoir in 2014. These were recovered, cleaned and painted professionally and brought back to where they are now displayed, including the large main outlet valve that I hope you all saw on the way in. Also, the ladder that the waterboard engineers used back in the day in the period 1886 to 1972 to access the reservoir for maintenance is now secured to this column very near to this central area of where we decided to bury the time capsule. As has already been said, 2086 will be the 200 years since the reservoir started producing clean drinking water to the local populations, and as it happened, as we've said, 100 years when Sherwood Observatory officially opened. So what's inside the capsule, you may ask? And many people who visit us do indeed ask that question. Well, we asked our members, visitors on open days, and we engaged with local schools, some who are represented here, what they'd like to see go in the capsule. And from those hundreds of suggestions, including in digital form, we formed a viable list and asked members of our society to vote for them. And pretty much all the suggestions voted for from the viable list are in some form or another now sealed in this very capsule, soon to be buried. And I'm going to give you a few examples. And these are genuine examples that are now sealed in that capsule. Voice messages to the future, including Councillor Rell, thank you for recording one. Our founder member, David Collins, History of the Society booked, thank you, David, for signing. Our fantastic podcasts, thank you to Joe Cathacol, who's at the back there. I urge you to at least listen to 3 that me and myself, Joe and myself recorded about the history of the reservoir, which we recorded the final one just a week ago or so, including the first one, which we actually recorded right down here in the reservoir, in the mud. All the time-lapse recordings of the building of the project, one that has been playing on this screen now, and this is one of the first public showings of the time-lapse, which I think you can agree is absolutely fantastic. All part of science, technology, engineering and maths on that screen there, and they are buried in the capsule for prosperity. All the predictions and contributions that people have come up with are all sealed in there, so hopefully our future generations can see what we thought of in 2025, and hopefully, as Steve said, some of the youngsters here can come back and see if their actual predictions came true. We've even put a COVID test in there, definitely unused, as it's of recent times. As I said, definitely unused because we don't want 2020 pathogens suddenly being released again in 2086. It's definitely unused. Thanks, Tony, for that idea. And one clever member even downloaded the entirety of Wikipedia, which is about 100 gigabytes, and it's on an SD card in the capsule. So we can actually restart Wikipedia if necessary. It's true. There are even instructions in there to how to access all the file formats and all of the files. So there's no doubt that no one can not work out how to even access the files. As we want people in 2086 to see what the Society did and what its members were doing in 2025 and what all our predictions for the future were too. Talking of predictions, the school children came up with many suggestions, as you can probably imagine, what they thought their school day might be like in 2086. And a few of the ideas that came up with, lots of robotic things, including robotic teachers. Lessons will be all electronic and not in classrooms. Many mentioned VR, virtual reality, and one even said drones that would clear up after them. So, we are hopeful that at least some of them will return here on 5th of October 2086 and see the capsule opening ceremony and see if their predictions were right. This project wouldn't have been possible without the efforts of so many people, including our local schools, our brilliant members, including our founder member, David Collins, and our project manager, Dr. Steve Wallace, MBE, well deserved. And as otherwise, none of us would be celebrating this moment in this fantastic repurposed Victorian reservoir. Thank you also to our fantastic centre manager, Tony Booth, who is yet again in early on his day off. Thanks, Tony. And also thank you to Simon Martin, MBE, for being our MC. I really appreciate that. And here's to 2086. And as I said on my voice recording for the capsule, I hope they enjoy the future as much as we have enjoyed the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. So we are indeed fortunate to have with us today a real absolute VIP guest who has given up his time to come and attend this event and this ceremony. Please would you put your hands together and welcome up the High Sheriff of Nottinghamshire, Ed Attenborough. Thank you.
So you're probably doing a little bit of science, you've certainly done some maths, and what I want to talk to you about is the joy of engineering and engineering as a future. So my background is in engineering, and I've done lots of different things. I hadn't actually planned to talk about any of this today, but the script's ripped up and I'm going to talk about something else. But let's first of all talk about the High Sheriff. So who knows about the Sheriff of Nottingham? Stick your hands up if you know anything about the Sheriff of Nottingham. Brilliant. Okay, I'm not going to ask you, don't worry, and I know there's one at the back there. So the Sheriff of Nottingham, he's the baddie, isn't he? He's the one who's always chasing after Robin Hood. He's got a really bad press, you know. So I'm the good sheriff, and I'm here to make up for all of that bad PR that we've had over thousands of years with the other sheriffs. So it is the same office. It's the oldest secular office in the UK. It's over 1,000 years old, and I was honoured to be appointed by the King to be High Sheriff of Nottinghamshire. And as my colleagues in other counties say, if you're going to get the gig, it should be Nottinghamshire, because everybody knows the Sheriff of Nottingham, right? So that's the past, and it's rooted in the past, the role, but it carries forward to the present as I'm standing here talking to you today. And of course it carries into the future, and you are the future. You carry the future in your hands, in your heads, on your shoulders. So amazing things are going to happen in the future, and you're going to be privy to those things. Everything that I do today as the good sheriff is around, and that's the future up there as well, so hopefully they're not going to come through the roof. So I'm here today to talk to you about future and setting future things in progress. So I want to do initiatives that support you as young people. You are our future. So everything that I'm doing in my year as High Sheriff is to support you in what you might do in the future. So nothing comes out of the public purse. It's entirely voluntary. So my background, I went to school just as you all did. I was quite good at maths and physics, and I ended up reading engineering at university. And whilst I was at university, I was very lucky to be sponsored by a company called GEC Marconi. Now, this was before computers, so I had to type out on a typewriter my CV, such as it was, at the age of 17 years old, looking for a sponsorship. I then had it photocopied, or Roneoed as it was in the day, and then I wrote, excuse my English, 60 covering letters and sent it out by post, put a stamp on, and I got 3 interviews and I got 2 job offers. And just please remember this, it's the best thing you can possibly do to try and get work experience, because when you get to that age, and I know for you time is elastic, right? You've already been sat in this room for 20 minutes and it probably feels like 20 hours, because when you're young, time at all ages is very subjective. And of course when you're having fun, time just disappears past very quickly. But very soon you will be at that age, sooner than you think. And think about engineering, think about jobs, because engineering and science is our future, and you are our future. So it's an interesting career to follow. And I indeed did follow that career, and I was right at the start of computers. So when I first went to work for GEC Marconi, we were doing radars, which are things that look for aeroplanes and things like that. And in the day, that was all done in hardware, but just at that time, computers were coming of age and software was coming of age. So I got more into software and developing computer programs. And because I'd been sponsored at university, I was very lucky to do live projects, which were demonstrated at Farnborough for various military applications. And that led me on to a career in science and tech. And I worked for NATO, doing guidance systems for missiles, and ultimately, and I can't believe the symmetry today of this, I ended up working for the European Space Agency on the Ariane 5 program, and the last launch of Ariane 5, which was just over a year ago, put the Planck Space Telescope into orbit. So what an amazing thing to have that full circle and to see that happening. And now I'm still involved in tech, and I do computer programs that help print body parts. Now I know that sounds very futuristic, but basically if you can have a scan, an X-ray, you can get a 3D image just like you do on your PlayStation, and then you can use that 3D image to design maybe a new hip or a knee or whatever else, and with 3D printers we can print that. So these kind of techs, which are actually used to also print rocket engines, are also used for human tech. So all of this will be part of your futures. I expect that all of you, all the kids in this room, will probably go into low Earth orbit, because in the time it takes for this capsule to be dug up, there will be new transport technologies, new engines that will enable you to go from London to Sydney in probably under an hour. These things are already, Starship is already doing that. That's why Elon Musk's buying up oil rigs so that he can launch offshore near cities. And I think all of you will go into low Earth orbit. Some of you may be lucky enough to actually go into space and into orbit. So what an amazing future. And in this capsule is the past, right? It's assembled knowledge and experience from all you kids, from all the other people around here. And the present is that this capsule in a few minutes' time is going to go into this hole in the ground and be sealed. And the future, when you're kind of older than me probably, is that this capsule is going to be dug up and people are going to look at it and they're going to think back to what we did today and where we're going in the future. So past, present and future, time and space. What a wonderful privilege it is to be here today opening this. And I just want to thank everybody, particularly David, for your foresight all those years ago in creating this wonderful, inspirational local facility in Nottingham for the future. Thank you very much.
So we are now coming on to the actual main event, and this is going to be a two-parter. First off, Julian and Dr. Steve Wallace are going to lower the time capsule into the chamber that's been created. And I expect when you came in, you had a chance to look around it and look into it, and you will have seen that it's got the sort of Lego structures at the bottom. The time capsule is going to be artfully lowered into it so that it sits amongst those carefully constructed Lego buildings and shapes without crushing or breaking them.
Drum roll.
Yes, drum roll and a round of applause. Oh, I can confirm that has been placed with absolute precision on the guides. Well done. Well done indeed, gentlemen. And that is the time capsule within the chamber. The second part of the process is where we get the hired muscle onto the job. And Tony and Craig are going to lift the heavy slab and place that over the top. Tony and Craig, would you like to? Look at these fine, strong young men going to lift up the stone slab and place it on the top. You'll have seen the stone slab as well, a very nice piece of stone. It's been engraved really nicely and indeed donated from Mansfield Memorials by Scanta, so many thanks to them. Okay, drum roll for Tony and Craig. Excellent, well done. So that then is the time capsule within the chamber slab on top. And there it will remain. I believe it's going to be sealed around the edges. There it will remain until 2086. One question that we were asking that I'm not sure that anyone has quite got the answer to yet is when it comes to 2086, how are they actually going to get that heavy sealed slab out and then lift the time capsule out from underneath? It may
They've got 60 years to
60 years to work that out, and they may well be cursing us in 60 years' time. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, High Sheriff. That ends this part of the proceedings. But if you've heard me speak to you before, you know that I can't go without resisting something of a little joke. So this is one for you kids too. So a mum up on the upstairs landing was having a really protracted row with her daughter. It happens, doesn't it? Mum was really exasperated, really irritated, really exasperated, because she had been trying to persuade, she had exhorted her daughter to clear up and clean up and tidy up her bedroom. It was a real tip. And the daughter was standing in the doorway to her bedroom, and she looked at her mum. She looked into her bedroom. She looked up at her mum again and said, "Look, Mum, can't we just seal the whole thing up and call it a time capsule?" However, that may not be needed, might it, if we do indeed have drones that will come round and tidy up after you. So that might well be the solution. So whilst we're all here, I'd also like us to put our hands together, please, and thank Chris Miguels for his fantastic piano playing that you've heard as he came in.